Risk. We experience risks every day. For each risk, we carry out a risk assessment, though this might not be a conscious decision. The degree of risk posed depends on the chances of an event occurring and the consequences if it does. So we can say risk is equal to the probability of the event multiplied by the consequences of that event. For example, when crossing a road, if you choose a safe place and the correct time, the chances of being knocked down are very slim, but the consequences will be very serious. We wouldn't cross a very busy road, as the chance of being knocked down is just too great. A rock climber would normally use a rope, even on a climb well within their capabilities. Their chances of falling off are very low, but the consequences could be fatal. A child will walk along a balance beam in a playground and may fall off many times. The probability of falling off is high, but the consequences of falling a small distance onto a safety surface are minor. Often the perception of a risk does not match the facts. For example, many people are terrified of flying, even though statistically it's much safer than travelling by road. This might be due to the massive press coverage that air disasters get compared to the lack of car accidents in the news. Also, people often survive road accidents, but anyone surviving an air crash is a rare event. We can reduce the risks involved in activities by using safety equipment such as seatbelts, guardrails, etc. People often know of the risks involved, but will continue with an activity anyway. A mountaineer might feel the risk to life worth taking to have the experience of climbing a mountain. They'll take precautions, but will be aware that there is still a risk involved. Smokers cannot fail to be aware of the risks as they're written on the packets of cigarettes, but many will still smoke for various other reasons. When planning a medical procedure, the doctor has to weigh up the risks of the procedure against the risks of not acting or of using a different treatment. For example, X-rays can cause harm to cells. In general, the dose needed is very small and is only equivalent to a few days' exposure to normal background radiation. X-rays are more likely to damage very young children. So if a woman had fallen and had pain, for instance in her hips or back, doctors might want to X-ray her to find out if they can see anything wrong. If the woman was pregnant, they might decide to wait a few days to see if the pain improved. They might decide the risk of an X-ray is not worth the benefit they might get from it. If, however, she had a broken pelvis and an X-ray was essential, they might decide that the slight risk to the unborn baby was worth taking for the benefit it could give to the mother. For a patient in need of a heart pacemaker, the doctors must weigh up their chances of surviving the operation and of their quality and quantity of life, both with the pacemaker and if the pacemaker were not fitted. The people carrying out an X-ray will leave the room while the procedure takes place. They will be carrying out many procedures every day, and so this would amount to a significant risk for them, even though the risk of one individual X-ray for the patient is tiny. Radioactive materials can be harmful, and so precautions need to be taken by people working with them. You'll have seen radioactive materials in school, but should not have handled them at GCSE. Their use will have been logged to ensure no staff or students are exposed for longer than necessary. The teacher will have used tongs to handle the sources, increasing the distance between themselves and the sources. The sources will be stored in lead containers and in a locked box. These precautions can be summarized as limiting the time of exposure, putting as much distance as possible between you and the source, and putting a barrier between you and the source. In industrial applications such as power stations and producers of nuclear medicine, the workers and the workplace will be monitored closely for levels of radiation. Workers can wear a film badge. This contains a piece of photographic film which will become fogged on exposure to radiation. Different parts of the film are protected by different materials which will block some of the radiation. The badge will be examined periodically to assess whether a worker has been exposed to too high a dose of radiation. The air, soil and water around a nuclear power plant will be monitored for any increase in the levels of radiation.